You know, the statement that Trump is bringing us to the edge of being an autocratic state in and of itself disproves the premise of that statement. Think about that. It's absurd. Under the First Amendment, the general proposition is that government should not be regulating the content of its citizens' speech. You have the opposing idea that it's the responsibility of government to decide not only what its citizens should think, but what content they are allowed to see and engage with. To some, the reality of the government regulation of speech may sound like it's a distant, authoritarian notion that won't come to the United States of America, but I would ask you to just think back again. I'm reminded of Orwell's 1984. Think of the memory hole that people are trying to memory hole right now, some even on this panel, sir, who don't want you to realize how bad a government can be when it attempts to censor right here in the United States. For instance, President Obama, this is from an article I'd asked unanimous consent. President Obama has been the most aggressive administration in history, not only going after whistleblowers, but after pursuing reporters who write their stories. How about this one, the Biden legacy? How about this whole stack, and I'll put these in just a second. It's convenient to memory hole what the Biden administration did, what they did to suppress dissent and contrary opinion. I'll get into that in a second. The actions of European governments show that the type of censorship by government is not only possible, but very much doable. Under the guise of public safety, government officials in Europe have suppressed and arrested individuals who have simply engaged in political speech that is arbitrarily deemed to be unspeakable by the government. This kind of regime doesn't just appear on the scene, though. It takes time to develop. And we've seen it here, and that's why I'm taking this opportunity to remind you that FISA must be reformed. FISA must be reformed. So, Mr. Price, you alluded to this, and so I have this document right here that compares the GDP growth of EU versus the US 1998 to 2023. And the US has grown about 87%, almost 90%. The EU has increased its GDP by about 13%. So you have almost a 6x variable there. The question is, when you set these kind of draconian fines and you set up a system that is amorphous and almost indefinable, might it not also have some more than just even the safety, ostensible safety of the society? Might it lead to trying to regulate when you can't innovate?
I think that's very much the case, sir. We've seen it not just in the area of speech, but obviously, as we were discussing, the Digital Markets Act, data protection, and so on. And Europe is facing some very serious structural problems demographically, financially. And a lot of what I think is inspiring the DSA is what we saw from Germany beginning after the election of President Trump and after Brexit, which is to control the narrative, slow down speech. And into that, then, they're throwing a very wide net out that's affecting all kinds of legitimate speech. We talked about my client, Päivi Räsänen, in Finland, who's prosecuted for sharing a tweet from the Bible. It's absolutely outrageous. And that becomes now the standard that the DSA will set, not just for Europe, but possibly and predictably globally.
And similarly, Mr. Reed, that's what's going to happen to your app innovators. They're not going to be able to have access to 440 million people in a marketplace in Europe without having to go through essentially government censorship.
Well, I think you hit it earlier when you said that their focus has been on regulating or adding legislation. And it isn't one piece of regulation or one piece of legislation that has caused problems for our innovators, both in the UK, in the EU, and in America. It's been the stacking effect. Because if you start with one regulation, you say, I can handle that, I'll build that into my business. It's when you have one, then two, then four, then six. So what's been the biggest problem for growth has been their answer is that old quip, the beatings will continue until morale improves. We often feel that way about regulation. Innovation will get regulated until we get more innovation, and I don't think that will work out.
Thanks, Mr. Reed. Now I'll finish with you, Mr. Farage. What happened to the great countries of the West? I mean, seriously, and their liberal understanding of civil rights and the ability to speak one's mind openly without fear of arrest or censorship or abuse of harassment by the government.
I think what went wrong in many ways is we forgot why we actually had those liberties and had those freedoms in the first place. We forgot that, as I mentioned and touched on earlier, we forgot the huge sacrifices that were made by citizens alive at that time to defend those principles against tyranny and against dictatorship. We've kind of lost our way in understanding why we are as we are. And I think that has permeated through the education system, where I'm not sure we've been teaching good values. The slavery comment was made earlier. I completely understand there's nothing good about slavery. But take our country, we spent decades driving slavery off the high seas. So whilst we were perpetrators to begin with, we actually, in the end, drove it off the high seas. So we need to teach our kids a sense of balance about our history, about the sacrifice that's been made. That's my feeling.
Mr. Chairman, I have some unanimous consent.
Gentleman is recognized.
This one, GDP growth comparison EU to US 1998 to 2023. This one, Biden's press freedom legacy, empty words and hypocrisy. Massive government censorship during and about COVID from the New Civil Liberties Alliance. The Fifth Circuit agrees that federal officials unconstitutionally coerced or encouraged online censorship under the Biden administration. This one, information during the pandemic suppressed. Feds blew $267 million fighting misinformation under Biden as Trump vows to ban censorship cartel. This one, how the FBI violated the privacy rights of tens of thousands of Americans. This one, Inspector General report on FBI's FISA abuse tells us one thing: we need radical reform. This one, UK comedy writer Graham Linehan arrested over social media posts criticizing trans activists. Why did Lucy Connolly receive a 31-month sentence for Southport tweet? Policing thought crime should have no place in the UK. Britain's emerging police state. Knock, knock, it's the thought police. As thousands of criminals go uninvestigated, detectives call on a grandmother. Her crime, she went on Facebook to criticize labor counselors. This one, UK steps up free speech crackdown as armed police arrest comedy writer Graham Linehan at Heathrow Airport. And this one, Britain's new thought police, how Labour plans to police your online speech. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.